Hey, it's Em, here to talk about This House Will Feed by Maria Tureaud. This book, my husband saw it in the library and handed it to me because he knew it was the kind of thing I tend to like. Historical fiction, haunted weird houses, supernatural stuff, gothic stuff. So yeah, I checked it out and read it. Let's talk about the story. It's set during the Irish potato famine. We'll start there. There is a lot of back and forth in this where there are a lot of flashbacks in this book. So the present timeline is 1848, but we flash back to like 1846 and all of the events leading up to 1848 quite a bit. There's a lot of bouncing back and forth. The main character, Maggie O'Shaughnessy, she's at a workhouse in Innis, Ireland. Workhouses were where people suffering from the famine who had been evicted from their homes, they were starving, they had kind of nowhere else to go except to lay down and die, quite literally. They would go to the workhouses and be fed rather meagerly and given menial chores, hard work, just for survival. The idea was that they would then owe a debt to, I guess, the British Crown, really, and they'd be stuck in the workhouse for the rest of their lives unless somebody could come pay their debts and get them released. Maggie, though, is one of the lucky ones because a woman arrives at this workhouse looking for someone the right age and with the right look, I guess, to masquerade as her daughter Wilhelmina. So this wealthy woman, Lady Catherine, she needs somebody to pretend to be her daughter so that the solicitors won't take away her estate because her husband and daughter are actually dead, and she was poor when the husband married her, so she's kind of frowned upon as an heiress. I assume she wasn't left any of the property by her husband, who had come to kind of hate her anyway as their marriage went on. So in order for her not to be basically cast out, she needs somebody to pretend to be Wilhelmina, who would have been the heir to the estate. So Maggie signs up for this deal, the contract, and there's a literal contract that she signs, says that she'll come to the house, practice being a fancy, rich, Anglo-landed Irish aristocrat, pretend to be Wilhelmina, and then once the solicitors are satisfied, she'll be pensioned off, given some land and a house of her own, and she can do whatever. Maggie, what are her options? Maggie doesn't actually have that much of a will to live anymore, and the flashbacks explain why. She's lost her entire family to the famine. She's lost a baby. There's just a lot. And of course, the whole Wilhelmina thing is not as easy as it seems, and there's a lot more going on. Kind of a push-pull from modern Christian Irish culture and the old Irish culture. There's a lot of that. It's all told from Maggie's point of view. And unfortunately for me, as much as I could sympathize with the situation, I couldn't quite like her. I didn't connect to her. And I think that's because she's written to be standoffish after everything she's been through. She's written to be, it's me against the world. And that part works. It's believable. The amount of detail about the Irish potato famine is incredible here. This is a very well-researched book. I certainly learned a lot. Growing up in the U.S., it's like a footnote in history. We learn it based on how it impacted our country, right? A bunch of Irish people came to America. That's kind of the take when you're learning about it here. So I found that really enlightening, especially since I do have Irish roots. I have mostly Scottish roots, clans Innes, Maxwell, and MacDonald, but my Irish ancestors were surnamed Savage from County Down, so up near Belfast. I don't know a whole lot about them, but I have an interest in my history and in history in general. But yeah, it was very enlightening. The descriptors are quite striking. That much I will say I will not forget quickly about this book. There's also a lot of Christ imagery. I don't know if this was intentional, but at one point, and this might be a mild spoiler, but I've already told you her family's dead, but at one point when it had come down to just her dad and her brother, her dad cuts himself open to bleed himself to give them blood to sustain them because he knows he's going to die anyway. And then as the brother is dying, and you learn this pretty much from the get-go in the book, so I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but her brother puts one of his legs in the fire that they're sitting next to because they've been turned out. They're just kind of out in the countryside, and tells her to eat it when he's gone because she needs the strength. And there's a very kind of take, eat, this is my body, take, drink, this is my blood kind of parallel there if you have any kind of religious upbringing. So I thought that was interesting, but I don't know how intentional it was, or it because we do come back to certain religious things in this book, you know, the Lord's Prayer and things like that. The focus is largely on the culture war between the Irish, who were literally being starved by the British, and the British aristocrats who had no problem seeing the Irish as very little more than beasts of burden and did not think them worth, I guess, saving. They just didn't see them as human, it seems like. Or at least most of them didn't. Now, at least one of the characters, well, a couple of the characters in this book are actual historical figures. Not necessarily well-known ones, but the author's note does detail that. I gave it 3 stars. It's probably like 3.25, 3.3. The difficulty being not only did I not really connect with Maggie very well, but that a lot of the twists were very obvious to me early on. You almost want to go, how did Maggie not figure this out sooner? How is she this stupid? But there's a lot of how is she this stupid, because a lot of the family's downfall comes down to some of the choices she made that you were like, okay. And she recognizes that. She blames herself for a lot of it. But yes, I saw pretty much all of the beats coming. I think for me, one of the reasons I didn't give it more stars is that it was not a book I was excited to pick up. Like, I didn't mind continuing to read it. And at one point I did actually kind of consider stopping. Like maybe at the 30 to 40% mark. I was like, how much do I care? I don't know. But I kept reading, and it did around the 60% mark start to get better and more interesting. But for the most part, I just wasn't that excited to pick it up ever. I was kind of like, oh, it's bedtime and I always read before bed. And this is the book I'm reading, but I would be just as happy to pick up my phone and play a game on my phone or something. It wasn't like, oh, I really need to know what happens next. Again, partly because I kind of already knew what was going on and what was likely to happen. But I did want to see how it ended. I thought about trying to find spoilers, but I didn't. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's a good book. It wasn't a wowza kind of book. If you're looking for historical fiction that's very well researched, there's this. If you're looking for, I mean, something with a gothic, you know, tang to it, this has that. if you want something that's truly horrific, not because of the supernatural stuff, but because of the actual stuff that was done to the Irish by the British, this is a good choice for that. I liked it. Didn't love it. There are some things that will stick with me, which I guess says something about the story or the writing. I don't know. But the fact that I wasn't super excited every time I was ready to pick up a book to read. And yeah, the fact that I just couldn't quite connect with the main character. I liked a lot of the side characters. Although there's this thread that gets kind of dropped. Maggie, who's pretending to be Wilhelmina, has this, maid, this, named Beth, who admits or seems to have a little crush on the gardener / carriage driver guy. He's kind of just a man of all works around the estate. And then, Maggie / Wilhelmina is spending more and more time with this guy too. And I expected, some kind of row over that or some kind of acknowledgement that they both like the same guy. But then Beth's interest just kind of is never mentioned again. So I'm just like, okay, I guess. That went nowhere. The whole thing is really about revenge to some extent. Freeing yourself via revenge. I don't want to say more because I don't want to spoil anything. It was a little convoluted, but the descriptions are very detailed, very, you can picture everything. I really appreciated that there was a glossary in the back for certain terms and how to pronounce them and how to pronounce some of the names and, things like that. That was a nice touch. But yeah, sorry, this is a little rambling, but 3.3 stars. It was going to be 2.5, 3 at the most, but it did, like I said, get better towards the end, around the 60% or so mark, which is a little late. Like I said, I almost gave up. I'm glad I didn't, but I wasn't wowed by any of the turns because I absolutely saw them coming. So that's my take on This House Will Feed. If you've read it, let me know. If you have other suggestions of books that are similar, let me know that too. And until next time, take care.